Joining me now, Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat of California. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight. President Trump's trade policy took another beating this week. Most of his tariffs were blocked by a federal judge, only to be temporarily reinstated by a federal appeals court. Still, here he is announcing new tariffs just last night in Pittsburgh.
We are going to be imposing a 25% increase. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America. So we're bringing it up from 25%. We're doubling it to 50%.
Congressman, this week, even Wall Street, which largely cheered President Trump's second term, was joining in making fun of his tendency to chicken out on his big tariff threats. What do you make of this new one?
Well, he's just creating chaos. Look, he campaigned against the Nippon Steel deal. He said he was not going to allow Japan to buy a U.S. steel company. Of course, President Biden blocked that. President Biden stood with the steel workers. Now Trump basically has greenlighted the Nippon Steel deal and has abandoned his campaign pledge. He is not holding them accountable to create those union jobs in Pennsylvania. The steel workers are concerned about it. And so he says, well, what can I throw out there? I'm going to put out this 50% tariff. What about the sale of the steel company to Japan, which President Biden opposed, and you opposed on the campaign trail and now are engaged in? So there's no consistency, and he's offering no funding to build these new steel plants here.
So basically, your view is that he's throwing out these tariffs to cover up for the fact that he's selling the steel plants, U.S. Steel, to Nippon. But staying with Wall Street's response to Trump's actions, analysts are warning that his big, beautiful bill could have a big, ugly impact on U.S. markets by adding trillions to the national debt, mostly to pay for his tax cuts. And it's reported that some in the finance world are worried the cost of the bill could disturb the U.S. bond market with possible global consequences. Of course, the White House says these warnings have been exaggerated. What do you think?
Robert Sharpton, I'm glad you point this out because it is a completely reckless budget, and this is the last time any Republican should lecture us about debts or deficit. We have a $36 trillion debt. We have a $2 trillion yearly deficit. President Biden had a plan to bring down that deficit by about $1 trillion a year to move us back to having deficits not be more than 4% of GDP. The Republicans just passed a budget that would add $3.8 trillion over the next 10 years to the existing $2 trillion deficit we have, taking the deficit to GDP ratio to 8%, almost unprecedented, not in wartime. And this is why you see the bond market reacting. It's the most reckless economic policy of any modern administration.
Now,
to Capitol Hill now. Two Republican senators are leaning into their criticism of the sweeping domestic policy bill narrowly passed by House Republicans last week. Senators Ron Johnson and Rand Paul are warning about the impact the legislation could have on the national budget.
We've witnessed an unprecedented level of increased spending, 58% since 2019, other than World War II. This is our only chance to reset that to a reasonable pre-pandemic level of spending. And again, I think you can do it, and the spending that we would eliminate, people wouldn't even notice. But you have to do the work, which takes time.
How many other Republican senators do you think share your concerns and are willing to make major changes to this bill?
I think we have enough to stop the process until the president gets serious about spending reduction and reducing the deficit.
I support spending cuts. I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill, even with wimpy and anemic cuts, if they weren't going to explode the debt. The problem is the math doesn't add up. Somebody has to stand up and yell, the emperor has no clothes, and everybody's falling in lockstep on this. Pass the big, beautiful bill. Don't question anything. Well, conservatives do need to stand up and have their voice heard. This is a problem we've been facing for decades now, and if we don't stand up on it, I really fear the direction the country is going.
So, Ali Vitale, this bill barely got it through the House, and now there's some real opposition in the Senate. We just heard from Johnson and Paul there. They think it's not cutting enough. Others have expressed concerns, other Republicans even, about where they're cutting, the programs they might touch. President Trump over the weekend suggested he was fine with the senators making some changes to it, but he didn't get into any sort of specifics. What's the latest you're hearing there? What is the future of this bill as you talk to your sources on Capitol Hill?
It was always going to be a rocky road, but it's telling that Johnson was able to do what he was able to do. And I think it actually casts this process in a new light for those of us who watch Capitol Hill as closely as I and you and others do. This idea that it's usually a Senate Republican-driven process, or at least that's what senators, I think, were expecting to happen here. But the more times that Speaker Mike Johnson can come and pull a rabbit out of his legislative hat within his own conference, the more that Senate Republicans have to take seriously that the dynamics on the House side are the ones that really run the show here. And so, yes, senators are talking about making changes. When you hear Ron John and Rand Paul there talking about the fact that there might be enough Republican senators to gum up this process, that means he's speaking about at least seven Republican senators who, at least for now, want to pump the brakes.
Right now, President Trump's big, beautiful budget bill is headed to the Senate, where it faces surprise opposition from some Republicans. Senators like Josh Hawley, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, all expressing concerns about major cuts to Social Security. Constituents are certainly making their voices heard at town halls. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst facing blowback today after making this controversial comment at a town hall Friday.
When you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible, so they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die.
Joining us now, former Democratic Senator from Montana and an MSNBC political analyst, Jon Tester. Good to see you, Senator. What, sir, do you make of that? I mean, look, she's not wrong per se, but was the tone wrong? And continuing with, for heaven's sakes, folks, I mean, what are Iowans supposed to take away from that?
Well, first of all, I think she tried to use it to deflect. Didn't work too well. And I think what I take away from it, and I think Iowans would too, is that folks in Washington, D.C. and Congress aren't taking their job seriously. I mean, look, if you take and extrapolate that point of view out, then it makes perfect sense to cut NIH. Because why? Because why does research matter? We're going to die anyway. It makes perfect sense to cut Medicaid and shut down rural hospitals all over the country. Why? Because, look, you don't need health care. You're going to die anyway. I mean, I just think it's just a lack of understanding. I will tell you that you got to get. I applaud her effort to have a town hall meeting. I think that's really good, and I think Republicans ought to do more of that. Democrats are doing that, but Republicans ought to do more of it. But the truth is listen to what the questions that are there. They're very informative, and for her to deflect and say, this is people are going to die anyway. You shouldn't worry about it. I mean, my God, how not be in touch with reality is that? I mean, we are elected to office.
Flip, it sounds flip.
What's that now?
It sounds flip.
Yeah. It is not what a serious policymaker should be talking about, quite frankly. They should be talking about how we make life better for our constituents, how we increase opportunity, how we increase freedoms, privacy, all those things that make this country the greatest country in the world.
You, sir, have been critical of Trump's budget bill on the exclusion of any bipartisan input from Democrats, and particularly on its impact to farmers who shouldn't have to rely on government handouts. Explain how Trump's bill hurts farmers.
Well, I think it starts with his tariffs. I mean, people in production agriculture raise more food than we can eat in this country. So we depend upon foreign countries to have reasonable markets so that we don't go broke because our markets are not paying us the cost of production. That's where government subsidies come in. Because of these tariffs, because they've pumped a bunch of money into the Farm Bill for subsidies, it shows me that they're not going to do anything to do things like make these tariffs work for people in production ag. And by the way, folks in production ag are the tip of the spear when it comes to trade wars. We're the ones that end up on the short end of the stick. And they're not going to do anything to put more competition in the marketplace, which, by the way, when capitalism works, you get fair prices for your products, and it's good for consumers too, I might add. But what they're going to do is they're going to make us dependent upon the federal government with more subsidies. There's not a farmer that I know that doesn't want to get their paycheck from the marketplace. And to say, now we're going to turn this into a socialist system, so you have to depend on me, Uncle Sam, to make a living on your farm, just goes against everything that my parents taught me when I was growing up about production agriculture. And the bottom line is they need to take that bill back. They need to take the whole bill back and rework it because it's really bad in a whole bunch of areas. But the Farm Bill part of that bill that was passed by the House a week or so ago absolutely does not meet the food security needs or the needs of people in production agriculture in this country. And it certainly doesn't meet the needs of our taxpayers. It's going to increase our debt even more, which is something that we should be taken seriously, and this bill does not.
Given the fact that Montana, though, is a very red state, I'm curious how many of your fellow farmers are sticking by Trump's measures and for how long they'll continue to do so.
Well, I think so far, to be honest with you, I think most of them still are. I think it takes time for this uncertainty in the tariff situation that Trump is, putting tariffs on one day and taking tariffs off the next day. That's going to impact our markets. It's going to take a bit to do it. Soybeans, it's already happened.
See senators from across the aisle, Congress people still involved in this as well. And let's be clear, you got former senators like Tester. All of them are making it clear why Trump's big, beautiful bill is big. It is, I guess, a bill, but it's anything but beautiful. And the role of Congress people, like in the House, like Kana, are still important because, one, every last vote is going to be needed to get it through the House. And you say, well, it's already through the House. Well, let's also be crystal clear. A version passed the House. There will, at the very least, be amendments to the bill. Like if Hawley and Johnson in the House, Ron Johnson in the Senate, and Rand Paul and of course the Democrats are successful in stopping this bill, if they're not successful in stopping it totally, they will be able to force amendments because they'll be able to get other Republicans and say, hey, look, even if you're going to pass this, we got to amend it. We got to throw some amendments on here. And any amendment at all, especially any amendment of substance, basically starts the process almost over again because you have to send it back to the House to get passed again because both, there's called reconciliation. What they do is they have to basically go through the bill and ensure that the House version and the Senate version are the same before they actually pass it, because one bill that gets signed by the president's one pen is required to make it law. And so the House continuing to be skeptical of the bill they passed could get a whole lot worse with amendments. I mean, hypothetically, it could get better. But you see these senators reject Trump's big, beautiful budget bill on Saturday. You've seen them reject it for the last week. You've seen this. Well, it's not going away. The underlying issues with this, hated by the right and the left for different reasons, are going to endure.